So we're going to start, and I'll do a basic ground rules kind of thing, which most of you know about because you've been here before. We've got about 8 late arrivals, and we'll just let them come in when they can get here, and not worry about it. We're gonna start now and go for an hour, and after the hour's over, I'll give Jim. So
Jimmy.
Some people still do.
Jimmy?
Okay.
I do. I got
Okay. Anyway,
Can you ask my brother to put his phone away? Is that?
technical devices away. Do you call him
Texting
Jimmy
my
or
wife.
Jimmy?
I call him Jimmy.
yeah. So we're going to go the hour, and we're going to do what we've been doing about the last 2 years of these things. And that's rather than me rattle through a list of the invited alum's achievements. I'm going to let the invited alum talk to you about how he or she got to where they are, like we did last week with the doctors, which I thought really worked well. We did women in medicine last weekend, and they said, yeah, we'd like to do it that way. Dan did it with Jeff, and the same thing, and so on. So I'm going to tell you who he is and where he's come from and stuff like that, but not a formal introduction. And then turn it over to him, and hope that you guys remember that these are discussions, not presentations, that these are meant to be friendly and lively as possible. And so to make it easier for the presenter and for all of us, we hope he'll chime in when he's done with his basic introduction with questions or comments or whatever. Holly and I, Holly's my wife. We're talking about Jimmy the other night, talking about him coming. And she said, and I was talking about, some of you remember Bro, the chairman of NEH, who's been to a couple of these things. And we were talking about when Jimmy decided he wanted to go to Wesleyan, I said, well, a friend of mine's vice president, and maybe, I could help you out. And he said, would you lie for me? And I said, yes. of course I will. And so I wrote a letter for him. It was all lies. And then I called Bro and I said, this guy's coming from here. He said, what you like? And I said, he's a reverend pain in the ass. You'll love it. And he did. And then he's going to tell you where he went from there. But one last memory that Holly and I had the other night was that for some reason, I was the guy who vetted or approved or disapproved of graduation speeches for a long time. I don't remember why I was. Like Andrea said, it's a very bad choice on their part. But we had trouble in the past. There was a kid who was a son of a faculty member who did a Hitler salute to the headmaster. And there were a couple of bad ones, so they wanted somebody to vet them. And Jim came over to our house in Shaker to read his speech. Do you remember this?
With Hallie, right?
Yeah,
the two of them. The two of them.
Oh,
They both gave speeches.
yeah. And so he read the speech, and we listened, and I said, well, that's okay. But after they were gone, Holly said, not going. And I said, yeah, man. And she said, well, it's irreverent. It's dicey. It's going to upset people.
So the junior one or the
graduation?
Was
it graduation or was it the one before?
Your class voted you to be the speaker.
Right, but the one before.
But he also spoke as a junior speaker for the.
That one was irreverent. I think that
could have been it.
That's the one because the senior one was probably filthy cliche. That's how
well, anyway, so as a part from the shot, Holly said, he's just going to upset the audience. Incredible. Check out how upset this audience
We got to turn it back on. Some reason it died.
No.
I know. This is like the perfect time.
Perfect
timing, that technology.
Anyway, there's a picture of him giving his speech, and all his classmates around him were half asleep. Totally zoned. Yeah. So can we get the slideshow back, or
Maybe it just needs a rest. It's preparing itself.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Maybe it's work.
Maybe it can be intermission.
Maybe.
Or like a DVD extra kind of thing.
Shadow puppets.
Well, let's turn it over to Jim.
All right, so
I'll turn it over and then I'll plug in when, well, everyone will laugh when it comes on.
do you remember the story I asked you about the snake? Do you know?
No, I don't remember that.
I was just thinking about this the other day, which was when I first became aware of you was when, there we go. That's how because that was my senior speech. It was terrible.
Was it the moose?
It was like a pious thing about the environment. The junior speech was irreverent.
Junior speech was a
Yeah, like that I think offended me.
I think it's-
Um,
Oh, no, not enough.
It's your graduation speech.
There's something you.
What is this?
Show us something.
That's the senior assembly.
Yep.
And
I
who's
forget
that?
that. I can't really tell if that's a pink tuxedo, but it is.
Who's that with you?
That's
Jonah
Jonah.
Roosevelt. That's Jonah Roosevelt.
And then this I found in the archives, and I enjoy the caption that says Jim Margolis is the ringleader. That's a John Hawken photo. I think it's
Oh,
your-
is that
it
our
your
ad
ad
mod?
mod? I think
Yes.
it's your ad mod.
That's hilarious. I've never noticed that.
I don't
With the
recognize
striped
any
shirt
of
and
the
that.
other.
Blue.
Yeah.
That's John Carrot,
Oh my God.
Drew Narton, Tom
Yeah.
Murphy,
Tom Murphy.
June ninth.
Ben Stoddard.
Ben Stoddard, thank you.
Jonah, here.
Is that Allie Moore?
No, that's not.
Yeah, what year was it?
That's second one.
That's
89.
Lene Kaling. Wait, all right, yeah.
There's another one of the ad mod. I think it looks like you're eating donuts. So you were here?
Wait, that's a good idea.
And one more.
What is
This
that?
is,
Oh, that's our diorama of the death of Catherine the Great.
Yeah.
Oh, you can see the
Yeah,
horse.
you see the horse?
And that's Jim right here. Right, that's you.
And that's John Tottenham's influence.
I had fun looking at these archive photos, I have to say. And the caption was indeed Catherine the Great in her horse. So.
I'm glad that was documented. I didn't realize that existed.
Very cool.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for coming. So I could end this really quickly because everyone probably wants to know how do you win 7 Emmys, and my answer is right place at the right time, because that's all there was to it. But when I got out of college, I didn't know how, I always kind of wanted to work in comedy, but I didn't really know how you did that because I grew up here and it was before the internet. And I was also interested in journalism, so I worked as a journalist, and I was at 60 Minutes for, among other places, and I knew about the Daily Show kind of before people had become aware of it, or were just starting to, and I basically got in touch with them and was offered a job. And so I spent 10 years there, which was a very good place to be at the time. I started in 2001, so about 2 years after John took it over. And it was this kind of amazing place to be, and obviously very talented group of people, and this very specific moment in time, the Bush administration, which then seemed so extreme, and now seems very, very chaste. But so that's where most of those Emmys came from. So I did that for many years, and then I always wanted to work in scripted comedy, which is a very different thing than late night, which The Daily Show is. And I had a chance. My friend Rob Corddry from The Daily Show had sold this idea to Adult Swim, which is a part of the Cartoon Network that does kind of late night programming, to create this show called Newsreaders. And he called me and said, "Will you come and do this with us?" And so I did. So we created that show, and then that necessitated moving to Los Angeles, which my family did reluctantly. And
You were in New York for the.
in New York, I was in New York for about 15 years. And then I've just been in LA for the last 5 years working on different shows, most recently Veep, where I was lucky enough to win another Emmy. So that's where the Emmys come from. I think that gravy train may have stopped. But so it's just been, I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of different things and to continue to be able to do different things. I did something, I wish I could talk about it, but if you watch Sean Oliver's show this Sunday, it will be on, but I'm not allowed to discuss it until it's on. This will be a much more interesting discussion in a week probably than it might be now. But so I still am able to kind of work in that part of kind of late night and satire, but also in narrative shows, which is what I mostly do now. And so now I'm not on the staff of a show currently, but I'm trying to sell my own show, and that process involves a lot of pointless meetings and hollow promises and lonely drives from meetings where people pretended to be interested in what I was saying, using lots of buzzwords that mean it's just not right for them. But I have a few different scripts that I'm writing for other shows now, so I stay pretty busy. But it is a very it's a very strange world to live in LA where kind of everybody does this, and it is very much a one industry town. And I'm sure in Cleveland, if you saw people, you probably see a lot fewer parents in the middle of the day just kind of seemingly doing nothing, but that happens a lot in LA because but when you have a job, that's all you do. Not all you do, but the hours are very long and very intense. But then there are always kind of hiatuses between jobs. So it's not the kind of work you find in Cleveland. I'll say that for it. But it's been great, and I've been lucky enough to work with so many talented people, and like I said, I mean, to be on the Daily Show all those years with all those people who have all gone on to do great things from the Daily Show, and to work on a show like Veep, which is just such a thrill to be. I mean, that cast and Julia Louis-Dreyfus are all amazing, and to work for HBO, which is, when you work for most shows, you're constantly being told you can't do things because of money and because of other things. And when you work for HBO, it's the opposite. So,
can you give us some examples?
I'm about to give you an example. The reason I showed, or I sent that clip of the finale of Veep was when I was writing that, there was a whole, if you watch the whole, not in that clip, but the episode, there was a whole inauguration, which is obviously a very big thing to do. And I wanted to, first, when I went to do that, I said to the showrunner, which is what the person who's in charge of the show is called, I said, well, how are we going to do? He's like, don't worry about it. That's not your problem. Just write it, and someone else is going to figure out how to do it. And that's what happened. I mean, we shot an inauguration, and then I said, well, I want to do this thing because in the process of writing it, I watched a lot of past inaugurations, but particularly the transfer of power between Bush and Obama. And there's this great scene where the Obamas walk the Bushes to Marine One, and they leave. And I said, well, what if we did this? Can we do a scene in a helicopter? But the helicopter, Selena starts to leave, and the helicopter craps out and has to make an emergency landing to add insult to injury. And I expected the answer to be, no, we can't shoot a helicopter. Like, you're insane. And they're like, all right. And they figured out how to do it. So it was, I mean, it's very different than working almost anywhere else I've ever worked, and everyone who works in this business they're increasingly disinterested in working for the networks and only want to work for HBO or Netflix or Amazon because of the quality of what they do, but also because the process is different and the involvement of people ruining your ideas is on a different level than you get in the television that ends up on broadcast networks. And if people want to know why they watch so little broadcast television, I'm happy to offer my opinion about that process, because it's what I'm in now as I try to sell things, and it's just it's truly mind-boggling, the system that is in place and has been in place for many years. But I have been fortunate enough to work in a number of different, the less money that is involved, the more freedom you have generally. And so I, by the way, specifically chose those two Newsreaders clips, which is a very late night show that I did because I wanted to cement my place as the lowest brow guest ever to be invited here. And I find it hard to believe that anyone can touch that based on what I forced you to watch. But I did. I don't know if anyone did the homework. But I sent those specifically to tell a handful of stories, which some of them aren't even my stories to tell. But if you watched the Stephen Colbert on the Republican floor, where he talks to where that woman says, "Where are you from?" and he says, "Nambla." So Stephen comes from, I think he's one of 7 kids, maybe one of 8. And everyone he has one brother who's a social worker, and then everyone else they're pretty conservative. They're from South Carolina. Most of them live in DC now. And he gets a call from his sister in DC. And she says, you know that woman that you told you were from Nambla? And Stephen said, yeah. She said, my kids go to school with her kids. Not very happy with it. But the flip side of that story is in that stupid gene story, there's that professor at Columbia who we had fun with at his expense. And Stephen was taking his dog to the vet, and this woman came up to him and said, you did that thing with, I don't remember the guy's name. He's my father-in-law. And Stephen just went kind of white. And she said, thank you so much. He is such a pompous asshole. We're all so happy. And then the Penguins one, that guy, that was the only time, because when you did these things, The Daily Show, especially that long ago, they all took a long time, but we only had one camera then, and so that meant they took twice as long as they do now. And you had to deal with some pretty objectionable people, and that guy, that was the only time I've ever seen Sam B, who was nice to everybody, snap when she just could not be around him, and he was the most repugnant human being I've ever met in my life, and we had to have lunch with him. So there are a lot, from The Daily Show, there are lots of very weird memories like that. But I would be happy to take any questions.
I have a question about possibly where the industry is going then, because if you have these network conglomerations where 20 people have to be in on a decision, and you don't have the money, you don't have the support for your creative vision, but HBO and Netflix. So are these folks going to push out these conventional ways of doing things?
The problem is that while that doesn't seem to work, when it does work, it's so lucrative
There is a reason
that if there are 15 shows that aren't good, but 2 are successful and make it to syndication, then there's so much more money involved. There's no money in any of the streaming services or HBO. They don't have syndication because they don't end up anywhere else. So no, I don't think it's ever going to change.
Because it seems like everybody under 40, all they do is like, Dad, don't you watch streaming? And I'm one of those old geezers. I've never seen any streaming things. I just, I watch those shows that are so bad that I won't watch them, so I don't watch TV. But my kids will go, "Oh, have you heard about this? Have you heard about this?" And so
I think it will change, but I don't think it will change as much as. It's interesting because a lot of people that I know don't want to work on network shows. And the big problem they have is they have trouble getting the actors that they want, because an actor would much rather, like an established actor, would much rather do a Netflix show where they're going to do 10 episodes than an ABC show where they're going to have to do 23 episodes, because it means they can spend 3 months doing that and then go off and do something else. So it is, like right now in LA is pilot season, so they're making all the pilots, and the way that works is they buy a bunch of ideas in August, September. Those ideas go through the process of being written and rewritten, and then at the end of December, everyone sends in the scripts are due. They go through them, then they decide which pilots they're going to make. So that's where they are now. So now they're casting those pilots. They'll make them, and then they have, and so then say a network makes 12 pilots, 10 pilots. They'll have 2 or 3 slots that those can go into. So it's very hard to get something actually on the air. And then once it's on the air, it's very hard for it to find an audience, because there's so much more television now than there used to be.
Jim, can you talk a little bit about writing for Veep? I get the impression, and I enjoy that, and I watched Curb and Larry David, and I know Julie Louis-Dreyfus. There's a connection. It seems they're almost not ad-libbing, but improving. Is that a fully written script like in a traditional?
Veep is a process unlike any other. The way, like in a nutshell, the way that most shows are made is story gets assigned to a writer writes a script, that gets rewritten, as you can imagine, several times. And there's what's called a table read, where the cast I'm sure you've kind of seen it. If you don't know what that is, you've seen it depicted in movies where they're sitting around a table and they read through it, and then they go and they make a few tweaks and they shoot it. But the way it worked with Veep was you'd get to the table read, and then after the table read there would be a lot of notes, a lot of them coming from Julia, who was also a producer of the show, and the other executive producers, and then the director, and then that gets rewritten, and then the director picks the kind of critical scenes to rehearse. But this is the thing that other shows don't do. And in those rehearsals is where the improv comes from. And then that improv gets written into the script when it seems to be working. And then every single joke on Veep there are probably 100 what are called alts, which means an alternative joke has been written for each of those jokes. And and most of them don't get shot, but as a writer, you submit alts to most everything. And then the showrunner chooses which ones he wants to do. So it was always such a big deal to get something in there, particularly when it wasn't your episode and you were just alting someone else's.
That's got to be fun.
It is fun. It's very gratifying when you think of this thing at midnight and you write it and it somehow makes it in there the next day, and you see Julia saying it. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Do actors would they rather improv, or would they rather be on a tight script?
It depends on the actor. I mean, some of some really are naturally improvisers and some are just straight actors. So, I mean, in that show, for instance, like Gary Cole, who's a great actor, but not an improviser, would never really improvise. But Julia, who comes from an improv background, would. So, I mean, it kind of depends what their backgrounds are as performers. Yes.
So I'm kind of curious as to, because lately I feel like we've seen not a lot of shows, but a good number of shows that are originally based on web series, and sort of like Insecure on HBO is from Awkward Black Girl, or High Maintenance on HBO is from High Maintenance web series. That awful show with that Miranda Sings character on Netflix, I just can't stand her. But it's like still, I think, a really, I mean, is that a new sort of in, so to speak, for like people to, I mean, not that everybody.
It's not that new. I mean, it's been going on for 10 years or so.
Right.
I mean, it's obviously a lot easier to and cheaper to make a web series, and that's where Broad City came from too.
Oh, right.
I believe. So I guess it's relatively new, yeah, the bar to get someone to give you the money, you know, a show, to give you some kind of reference, a show like Veep, which is the very high end, an episode of Veep probably in the end costs over $1 million to make. The cheapest you can realistically make a 22-minute scripted episode of something is about $600,000, and then obviously a web series requires a lot less money, and a lot of that is unions, because it's very expensive to make shows because the unions have deals with all the broadcast networks, but new media falls under different things, so that's a big much cheaper, which is probably minutia that no one needs to know. But
are the writers unionized?
Yeah, well, it depends. Like in web, I don't know that web shows.
I know a lot of the other people are. I don't know.
No, I mean the Writers Guild. I mean, any kind of TV show you see is. The writers are all in the Writers Guild, but web series probably.
Are you a union man? Or?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I'm not maligning unions by saying that's where a lot of the cost is, but that's just the reality of. No. I mean, that's how I get healthcare.
Yeah.
That's the Writers Guild. So, like everything is expensive to make. I mean, from permits and locations to.
You can get a job if you're not a union.
Well, it's very expensive to. I have a friend who just was a cameraman, and just to get into the union, you have to pay like $10,000. So it's.
Are you blacklisted if you're?
Well, you're just not allowed. You just won't get hired. If it's a union.
Blacklisted, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just it's if it's a union show, you can't work on it unless you get a waiver. So if you're not in the union. Yes.
How do shows on HBO get funded? I've always been perplexed by that.
I don't understand where all that money comes from, other than to tell you that it's cable subscribers. But it's seemingly, I've wondered the same thing and I don't have an answer. But it's, they don't seem to ever be worried about money. But they are weird. I mean, with Veep, it changed this year, but they would make us shoot a 5-day, shoot 5 days an episode instead of giving us a 6-day, even though that meant sometimes the days were like 16, 17-hour days, which meant that overtime was so high that it would have been cheaper to have a 6-day. So I don't understand any of that stuff, but you're right to wonder where all that money comes from.
My second question is, having a daughter who's at USC and in the industry and working right now, if we're wanting her to be independent financially, what do you think the best route is? You know,
I would think.
Yeah, really. I mean, I know acting isn't, but you know, in terms of being a producer, a director, a casting agent.
I think that's the wrong way to. I mean, I understand why you would look at it that way as a parent, but it is in theory a passion and art on some level. So you should do, you know, if you don't have the fire in the belly to do whatever that thing is and to make sacrifices when you're young, and you're doing it to make money, you should be doing something else, because all of the stories of anybody who has created something great, they didn't do it from a place of wanting to be solvent. They did it from a place of wanting to say something. So.
Sure.
That's why there are so many producers. That's my new pet peeve. When the producers keep.
Executive producers? You mean in the credits?
So many of them, yes. I mean, that's what.
It's people attach themselves to things who have, they have nothing to do. Executive producer sounds like a impressive title, but it's not like they just give them to everybody. And it's oftentimes like people's managers, or if a star is like, they will insist on an executive producer credit, which means they get paid a separate fee for that. And yeah, it's, and in fact, in movies, the title producer is a better title than executive producer. It's a very weird, I don't understand why, but those are people who do things. Not that all executive producers, some do, but not all of them. A lot of them are, someone's husband, wife, or manager. Yes.
Can you talk about the different kinds of work you do, and like when you're doing multiple types of work at the same time? What does that look like?
You mean the different things within one within one show, or?
So you write, you produce. You wear different hats, and I'm just curious. Do you wear multiple hats at the same time, or is it usually?
Well, it depends. Like when I did that show, Newsreaders, that was a small show, and I did everything. But on a show like Veep, I'm just a writer, although this is another explanation, by the way, of the producer thing. On TV shows, there's a hierarchy of writer credits. So when you see all those, like when you watch Blackish, and those credits come on the screen at the beginning, and it says producer, co-executive producer, executive producer, those are all writers. And the way that works is, when you start as a staff writer, and that's all boring guild stuff, but the longer you're there, your title changes, and then they have to pay you at a certain level, and you get that title, and all of these things are negotiated before the show goes into production. So, so on a show like Veep, I'm mostly just a writer. There are very few people who do. The guy who's running the show often will direct and write, but it's kind of hard to do both at that level.
How many writers are there on Veep, and are you collaborators?
Well, Veep is most shows, like a cable show, generally the writer's room will have 6, maybe 8 writers in the writer's room. Veep there must have been 12, and then, because the history of Veep is it was created by a brilliant guy named Armando Iannucci. It's a British kind of giant of comedy television. And so when I went to Veep, he had left because he was just burnt out. And so it had been all Brits. The first 4 seasons of that show there were no Americans on the writing staff. And now it was all Americans, but some of the Brits stayed on. And in fact, there's one guy whose job is just to do swearing passes. He's very good at writing very colorful swearing. So like when the script is finished, they'll send it to him in England, and he will just go through and do a swearing pass.
That's a good job.
Yeah, that would. Speaking of which, I have to say, when I was like going through stuff to show, I realized that you definitely have influenced my career in significant ways. But one way is in this character we created. Can you play the Skip Remming, the one that says no privacy? So this is a character for newsreaders who was kind of our. Hang on one second. So this was kind of our version of Andy Rooney, but I think in retrospect there seems to be bits of Peter Scott in it.
Words are powerful things. They can start wars, end marriages, even begin famous works of literature. Irregardless of your race or language, the words you use speak volumes about you. Take me. I just said irregardless. That's not even a real word. In a dictionary. Not a spell check on that glorified Underwood. So I'm a jerk. But I'm nearly as big of a jerk off as you are if you say any of these words, and I bet you'll say most of them. Outside the box. Real game changer. Nailed it. Brain fart. Latino voter. Drink the Kool-Aid. And if you say game changer, I'll pop you right in the word, old bro. Never change again with a nut. I sure would handle that. I really drink the Latino voter. Finally tonight, a few thoughts from Skip Rabbit. My grandchildren, Ryder and Madison, yes, those are the names their parents actually chose to give them. I always ask me why things used to be so much better in the older days. My answer is always the same. First of all, when kids used to ask questions, they didn't look you in the eye. Wearing a shirt with a collar and shoes with leather soles. And then I told them things were better because cigarettes tasted like burning flesh. A man was a man. It was illegal for doctors to turn a penis into a vagina. You could lease a new horse every year. Turkey sandwiches were a quarter, and prostitutes were 2 turkey sandwiches. Kids are listening, not even looking at me. They're off in the corner playing a ninja video game in their damn rubber-soled shoes that light up when they walk. That's crazy. This weekend, I wandered into a bar in a fancy part of town. There used to be a Mexican part of town. The neighborhood bar is a second home, with a bartender wife who listens to your problems and gives you rows of tiny glass children filled with liquid answers. I wrote that. This place I was in didn't even have a bartender. It had something called a mixologist. It took him 15 minutes to make my drink, which he called a cocktail. Well, it might have been worth the time. It didn't taste like a thimble full of fairy piss brewed by a gay unicorn on a gumdrop mountain. People seem to have forgotten this. Rose isn't supposed to taste like some doughy confection. It's meant to be a wake-up call for your problems to go to sleep. Thanks, kid. So tonight I'm going to show you how to make the one and only cocktail you'll ever need to drink. You'll need a glass, an ice cube, and a high-proof whiskey. And you start by taking the ice cube, throwing it out the window. You do the same with the glass. You just press it on with your lips and sit Ooh, that not a girl, you're short hairs.
So did you write that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, but that's an example. I mean, that show was so much fun because we just had kind of carte blanche to create these insane characters that we wanted to create. Now, you obviously couldn't do that on ABC. And so it's like one of those things. The payoff of having a network show is fantastic if you can do it. But it's also nice to have the liberty to not be told by a number of levels of people what you should and shouldn't do, what characters should and shouldn't be based on what has worked in the past or what advertisers will be offended by. So, but I do, particularly the thing on cocktails made me realize that your influence was not absent from my work.
Was it a coincidence that the football coach was named David Code?
Oh no, I forgot about that. Yeah, no. And everyone loved that name. That's a big thing when you're writing these things. Is it gets very competitive people coming up with the best names, and then they have to get what's called cleared, which means like if you create a character named David Code, they'll do a search, and the thing is set in Cleveland, and they'll do a search, and if they find there's only 2 or 3 people with that name, they won't let you do it because that person could then claim that you're using their likeness. But yes, that Coach Code was. Character wasn't based on him, but I just always thought that was such a great name for a football coach.
As an avid Clevelander, is being in LA or New York, was that a sacrifice for your profession, or do you say, you don't get it? You may think Cleveland's great, but
I love, well, I think it's neither. I mean, I love Cleveland, but I couldn't do my career couldn't exist in Cleveland. So it wasn't, I think like a lot of people, I think I was, certainly I think New York is somewhere that everyone should live when they're young. And so there was the pull of New York. Sean.
I'm just trying to envision, I mean, couldn't, there's no way, you have to have the wherewithal that they have in LA, the physical equipment and plan and everything. There's no way you could shoot these things in Cleveland and
well, you could for sure shoot them.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot, I mean, I don't know what, I mean, I think mostly post-industrial apocalyptic hellscape movies get shot here.
Yeah, I mean, you could write it.
But no, I have a friend, there's a show on Comedy Central called Detroiters that a friend of mine made.
You can't live in Cleveland.
No, but they shot it in Detroit.
Yeah.
But you can't, because the studios, like the infrastructure is all there and all of the, people who have the money are there. And you couldn't just be someone. I mean, there are people who do it. I mean, there are a lot of, like Richard Linklater, the filmmaker, lives in Austin, and he'll, Alexander Payne lives in Nebraska.
What's his name? Esterhazy or whatever.
Right, but he doesn't make movies anymore.
Yeah, but he did. He did it out in Jagged County, I believe so.
Well, he moved back here. I know he had that thing about
Jagged Edge. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but I thought he did all. I mean, I thought he kind of wrapped it up and moved back to Cleveland.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, he also wrote Showgirls.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't one of my favorites, but.
He lives here, but I think what happened was he had enough of LA. I think you can be very successful and then do things on your own terms from somewhere else, but you can't be, a cog in the machine and decide that you're going to find a machine somewhere where the machine doesn't exist.
Because
sorry.
There's just
because the people that, first of all, a lot of these things are shot on sound stages. They don't exist here.
Yeah.
But even the things that aren't, everything is in these places, which is why most movies and a lot of TV shows now are shot in Atlanta because they have tax credits that are very favorable. Like they will, to give you a sense, if you had $600,000 to shoot a TV show in LA, that's the equivalent of having $800,000 in Atlanta because of the tax credits. But so now they're building sound stages there, and people, I guess people are moving there, but the places they have to rent all the cameras from and get all that, that's all in LA or to a lesser extent New York.
Yeah. Okay.
So my question is, when you were talking about the hierarchy and how long people writing and different titles and things like that, with, if you will, millennials who are moving every 2 years, every 3 years, or whatever, how do they get their names out there if they're constantly moving in, and how are they getting credit?
Well, I can't speak to their nomadic ways, but I think if millennials who want to work in television, they are in New York or in LA, and I all the time I hear from people just out of college who want to and they all want writer's assistant jobs, which is traditionally how people, if you can get in as a writer's assistant, you can impress people and you can do that for a few years, then they'll give you a script to write. And then if you do a good job, then maybe you can get hired on a different show. So it's, or if they have a strong enough idea and they can get someone to read it, and it kind of, that's the, very small percentage of people who can do that. But I don't think, I don't understand millennials, and I also feel like all of the kind of discussions about them are media constructs to some extent, because I promise you there are thousands of 20-year-olds who are moving to LA who would love to stay in one place and be able to get their foot in the door, and they wouldn't decide that because of Burning Man they aren't going to go to work.
So kind of a question and follow-up to that, like what are the skill sets that they need to make it in the industry? I mean, maybe that's a convoluted question, or a naive question.
It helps. It helps to be to have famous and influential parents. I wish I wasn't kidding, but like that's a lot of who gets internships. And it is that thing where it is all of these places, like the Daily Show, for instance. Not at the writer level, but at a production assistant level. All of the production assistants that got hired there were former interns. And to intern there, you have to be able to afford to live in New York and do something and do an internship and not get paid. So it is a system that is broken, and there are people who kind of try to change it. But as far as skills, I guess, to become a writer, it's as trite as it is, it's having a voice and having something to say, and obviously being a good writer. And that is something that I owe Peter a tremendous debt to for all that I learned at Hawken. I mean, Peter and others, but I mean, really learned how to write at Hawken, and I got to college and I knew how to write, and that was a big deal. And it drives me crazy when I get emails people wanting to work in television and their resumes are just a sea of either just typos or abominations of the English language. And it drives me crazy. And I don't think people care about it as much as they used to, but I do. So, yes.
Well, so as a self-identified millennial.
I'm surprised you've been able to sit still for this. Congratulations.
No, this is really helpful, and also I am hoping to be as TV writers, and so this is very interesting to hear. But is there, if you could give them if you give me one piece of advice, not just millennials, but like if you give a former Hawken student a piece of advice who's about to graduate in May.
Oh, you're still at?
Yeah, I'm a senior at Oberlin.
Oh, wow.
I'm graduating in May from Hawken, sorry, from Oberlin College. Yeah, so I'd be ejected into the world.
Get Ed Helms, who went to Oberlin's email address.
He's actually on campus right now.
And write him an email and tell him you would like some help from him.
Or Lena, not Lena.
Or her, right, yeah. That's probably a better example. No, I mean, I would say just be willing to, one thing you should, when I was at the Daily Show, I didn't have that much to do with the interns, but I had some, and there were like 14 of them a semester, and there were always one or two who would do anything, and there were about 12 who thought what was being asked of them was beneath them. So my advice would be, don't think anything is beneath you, because it's not, and people will notice if you do think it is.
That's good advice.
That's exactly right. Yes.
I have two questions. One is,
having more.
could you speak a little bit about some of your favorite people to work with? Because I know I've heard lots of stories from you in the past. But then the other question is, I would love for you to speak a little bit about that moment when you were deciding to leave 60 Minutes to go to the Daily Show.
Well, you remember it probably better than I do.
Well, I remember having dinner with you and talking about it, but it was such a ballsy move at that moment in your life.
It was.
I think that was an interesting moment. That would be.
I was 30, so I was like at an age where you probably shouldn't be changing careers, which is what I was doing. So I was burnt out at 60 Minutes, and it was an amazing place to work. I worked for Don Hewitt, who created 60 Minutes, and I got to travel the world and do all kinds of great things, but I couldn't see myself being there for a long time. And at the time, no one knew what The Daily Show was. No one knew what it was. And it was a very hard thing to leave this place that was the gold standard of something for who knew what. And I remember telling my parents, who were supportive, but I knew that the last thing you want if your kid works at 60 Minutes is to have to tell people that they decided to leave to go work on this thing that no one's ever heard of. And in fact, when I was at 60 Minutes, I did a lot of terrorism stories, and at one point I was negotiating to interview Osama bin Laden. This was back when he was doing interviews, and obviously before he would have figured out I was Jewish. But and then I started at The Daily Show on about September 4th, 2001, September 6th, 2001, and then September 11th happened, and it seemed like the show was going to go away forever. There were all these discussions: can we make fun of the president anymore? Can we? And meanwhile, I had all these people calling me from, for kind of 60 Minutes related things, and I was thinking, well, I really fucked up. Like, this is.
Were you still in New York?
Yeah, I was in New York. Yeah. So it was a hard decision, but it was one. I immediately started having fun, which is 60 Minutes was a very satisfying and exhilarating place to work, but there was nothing fun about it. It was cutthroat and it was just a lot. And I wasn't particularly well suited to rising to the top there because it was very political in a way that there was a game that I wasn't quite willing to play. And then to be around these people at 60 Minutes, which is like, you can bring your dogs to work and you can.
The Daily Show.
The Daily Show, yeah. Like to leave that, and I was just, it was the best decision I ever made. And that was, and remains, I mean, those people they're still my closest friends. I haven't worked there for 5 years. But that was, I knew when I was leaving the Daily Show was in a way, a harder decision because I knew that I would never work somewhere with people that I liked more than I did there. So to answer your question, I mean, all of the on-air people, I've just had the chance to work with a lot of great people. I mean, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is a lot of people who are at that level are insufferable because I think if you're famous and people are telling you that you're brilliant all the time and you're making millions of dollars, it can't help but turn you into kind of a demanding, terrible person. But she is the best version of a famous person I've ever met. I mean, and she's more famous than, say, Stephen Colbert, but he is one of my favorite people in the world. And I did this thing with John Oliver, and it was so much fun to work with him again because it had been a long time since we'd worked together and I'd done that kind of work, and so it was a lot of fun. There was nothing more enjoyable to me than being stuck on a tarmac with Stephen Colbert, which we did for hours. So I didn't quite realize at the time how lucky I was to be around all of those people, but it really, that's why I say the right place at the right time, because it really was. I mean, the Daily Show, the years I was there, it was this moment where it was a phenomenon, and John was so brilliant, and the show just kept getting bigger and more complex and more ambitious, and it kept seeming like it was going to peter out, and it never did. So I was very fortunate to be there for that.
Jim, you talk a little bit about how the actors, how do they in general treat writers? Are they respectful of the writers?
In general, yes, because they rely on the writers to write them material. I mean, the whole cast of Veep is wonderful, and And particularly with an ensemble cast like that, they all want as much to do as possible. So they are, they certainly are, and they're collaborative, and there certainly are shows where that's not the case, but there also are shows where the showrunners treat the actors poorly. So it kind of goes both ways.
Can you tell us a little bit about David Hasselhoff?
How do you know him?
He did a thing with us when I was doing newsreaders, and he had just come back from Austria, where do you remember the story I told you? He opened for someone. Someone else, somebody huge opened for him because he's a huge rock star still in Austria. And then he told lots of stories about on the set of Baywatch how they were all fucking all the time. That's what he wanted to talk about. So. Yeah.
One more question, and then the time's up. It doesn't mean we have to leave, and it doesn't mean this week got to end. That means that this is the moment, 7:30, when we've advertised that people who have other stuff to do can leave. Jim assures me that he won't mind if everybody
Happy to
gets up
stay.
and leaves, but he's happy to stay. And
I was just gonna, I have a question.
oh, cool, that was fun. But if you have to go, and if you want to get something to eat, do so. But I just wanted to thank this man formally.
Thank you all for coming, braving the flu and whatever else is happening. Thank you for having me. I mean, I told Peter this earlier, but I'm sure a lot of people in this room had this experience, but I went to a good college and I didn't have a better teacher in college than him or John Hawken. Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't have gotten into that college without you.
Where'd you go to school?
Wesley.
And then how did you get your first job in hard news? That was through honesty, right?
That was, I put on my resume when my brother at one point had, for Doug Katz's brother, who is a celebrity here, his brother Pete had a grocery store, an organic grocery store. It was before his time. And my brother dressed in a giant carrot suit and handed out flyers for it. And so I put that on my resume as also blah, blah, and dressed as a giant carrot. And that was what got the attention of this man who hired me and became my mentor before he retired to become a dope farmer. But that's true. That is how, and I finally told him that was a lie a few years ago. It was livid, so. Hired me on false pretenses,
I'm just curious, given the change in media, the streaming, the Netflix, these kinds of media that we have now, do you think there's more room or less room for Cinderella stories, or?
You mean to come out of like Cinderella story in the Bill Murray narrative of Caddyshack, that kind of Cinderella story? Yes, I mean because if you can put something on the internet and it gets noticed, I mean the chances aren't great, but they're a lot better than when there was no internet and you had to be part of the system and there were 3 networks or 4 networks. So yeah, for sure. Yes.
I have a very simple question. Where do you keep your 7 Emmys?
On a bookshelf. I gave one. One is here in Cleveland. I gave to my father. Yes.
And Jim's parents couldn't be here tonight because they're on a cruise. And we tried to change the date so they could be here, but his dad said, nah.
They'll try to watch it on the internet and be baffled by the website.
I said, well, yeah, stream. He said, what? Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you.